Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susan Valoff, and on behalf of my co-presenter, Rebecca Montano, and myself, I want to thank you for carving out some time this afternoon for yourself to talk a little bit about resources and humor to help sandwich generation family caregivers. The format today is that Rebecca and I will be co-presenting, so we're going to go back and forth going through our slides. We encourage you to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, which will allow you to type in questions throughout the presentation. And we have a moderator, Jen, who's going to be compiling those questions and reading them at the end of the presentation. We want to make sure we have time to get through the material, but we also really want to hear your questions. So please go ahead and type those in as you think of them. All right, let's get started. We thought it might be helpful to talk a little bit about ourselves for a moment so you can know where we're coming from. I always think that when I go to a presentation, you know, what is this person's background? What is their experience? Basically, why should I listen to them? So a little bit about me. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a certified geriatric care manager, also called an aging life care professional. And I am vice president at Windward Life Care. We're a local company providing in-home care, skilled nursing services, and care management. And I am also a sandwich generation caregiver. I have a school-age child at home who's virtual schooling right now and has been since the spring. And I am the primary caregiver, long distance, for an aging family member across the country. So I'm going to weave my professional expertise as well as some of my personal experience into our presentation today. Rebecca?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Rebecca Montano, and so you guys have an idea. We have our pictures up here. I'm the one at the bottom with the blue and white blouse, and Susan has the blue and yellow blouse on there. I am the owner of Aging Focused, and I am also an aging life care professional. Susan and I are professional colleagues at different companies here in San Diego. And like Susan, I am also part of the sandwich generation. I did not have my own children, but I did have a stepdaughter at home, and I now have my niece living with me as she's attending college. And my father is also someone who I'm a primary caregiver or care provider for, and he also lives in another state. So like Susan, I'll be weaving some of my experiences, both professional and personal, in our discussions today and giving some examples along the way. And so we aren't only professionals in this area of sandwich generation, but we are also living that life. So we really can empathize with everything that those of you who are dealing with this are going through at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Susan so we can get going with our presentation.
Okay, and the submarine sandwich down there is our attempt at humor. We're going to make several attempts throughout this presentation, so it may be corny at times, just a warning. But you know, part of our thinking is that we know that this is a really tough time for caregivers right now, especially during COVID, that things are just at another level. And we recognize that and we honor that. But as you'll hear us talk about, we want to give you a number of different coping strategies to thrive and survive as a caregiver. And we feel, for us at least, humor is something that helps us get through those hard times. So we hope that you'll take it in that context. So what are we going to talk about today? First, we're going to define the sandwich generation. Then we're going to talk about what it looks like for many of us on a day-to-day basis, and we call that the squeeze. We'll discuss different family structures, different family scenarios, and some of the stressors that different families face. And particularly during COVID, there are some specific issues we want to address in this presentation. And then finally, we're going to leave today with 6 survival strategies or tips that will help you cope. It's important to define what do we mean when we talk about the sandwich generation. So basically, this is the group of people, us, who are, typically middle-aged. It could really be anywhere between your 20s and 60s if you're bringing up a child or grandchild in the home while also taking care, or extended family. As Rebecca said, it doesn't have to be a biological child or grandchild. It could be someone you're responsible for of a younger generation while you are caring for someone of the older generation. And so there are specific issues to those of us in this generation that we want to highlight today. So let's take a look at what a day in the life might look like. And some of you are really going to relate to this, and we're interested to hear your comments. So on a good day, things can be pretty great. I mean, there's a lot of joyful moments, right, in being a parent, and also in spending time with your aging parent. So, by no means does this presentation suggest that it's all difficult, because as we know, there are some beautiful moments. And the modern family photo up there on the right, mud fights, we're all having those in the backyard with our white outfits on, right? That's good stuff. But there are also those days where it just feels super stressful. You want to pull your hair out. You're arguing with your significant other. Your kids are slamming the door and telling you they hate you. Your parent is calling you 10 times during a meeting at work. Now you're worried about COVID, about your own health, about the health of your child or children, about your parents. People are isolated. So a squeeze day can be pretty darn difficult and can have some serious consequences, which we'll talk about in a moment. So what does it look like? Let's look at the research. So there was a study done by the American Psychological Association. This was a few years ago, but they found that moms, so women with children between the ages of 35 and 54 felt the most stress of any of the age groups, and that all parents in this group felt overextended, but with more women reporting extreme stress. And the effect of this basically is relationship problems with significant other, the children, the family at large. And it also affects our ability to take care of ourselves, research shows.
So I'm going to go, thank you, Susan. I'm going to go over some of what that looks like. So from a physical health perspective, when we're dealing with this type of stress, one of the first things that we experience is just that feeling of exhaustion, just being drained every day, having a lack of energy, lack of motivation, difficulty getting going. But from a physical perspective, what we feel lots of times are headaches, back pain. Those are the things that are noticeable. More muscle aches, it's just tough. And, as a result, sometimes we just either forget to eat, we eat too much out of habit, that would be me. We stress and we go for the snacks, right? Or the other things. And so we could also see physical changes in our weight. And then one of the biggest indicators of stress issues is difficulty sleeping. But what this all does, so when you look at all of the physical health changes, what is kind of the silent physical difficulties of being a sandwich generation caregiver and or being under high stress is having a lowered immunity and a higher risk for long-term chronic conditions like infection, high blood pressure, and diabetes. And then with that said, can you go to the next slide, Susan, please? We have mental health challenges. So part of that stress can also be depression, anxiety, frustration. Like Susan said, when the kids are slamming the door, saying, I hate you, your mom's calling 100 times a day, whatever the case is, it becomes frustrating and we can't get to the rest of the things that we need to do. in a day. And so what happens? We start losing interest in the things that we enjoy. We start losing personal time. We start self-isolating, maybe not seeing friends or reaching out. And I can tell you that, right now, I caught myself this week doing exactly these 3 things. So I walk my dog every morning. I stopped doing that because I had to get up to go get something done. And so that was a loss of both my personal time and interest. And I have, in COVID, we can't get together with friends anymore, but I have a couple of virtual group sessions with friends, and I've canceled on them this week because I had other things going on with parents and kids in the house. So it's important to understand that this does take a toll on your mental health. And so it's important to be aware of that. And then, of course, personal relationships can suffer. We have issues with spouses, children, our other children, our parent, the people we're taking care of. And I always say, unless you're an only child, there's always that opportunity for disputes with siblings. And of course, then there's work. All of us have to work. We have to earn a living. We have to pay the bills. We have to continue. But we have many disruptions in our work situation, whether that's from our kids calling, our parents calling, and all of that results in absences from work because of emergencies, because of doctor's appointments. When you think about, how many doctor's appointments kids and older parents, especially older parents with chronic conditions, have, it can be a lot. So what ends up happening, you either get up really early to get the work done, you stay late to get the work done, you might miss deadlines, you might even have to step back a little bit and have, some dropouts in your work, and how you're working and what you're doing. So again, it's one of those work to live versus live to work situations. Where are we in our lives as sandwich generation individuals? So from a report that was done in 2014 at the University of California, Berkeley, what they found is that caregiving is essentially another job. It's a part-time job. So if you think about working a 40-hour week at your regular job, and then you're now a sandwich generation member taking care of a parent and a child, you have now added approximately 20 hours to your work week. And so it's like working a job and a half. And so as a result, this has encouraged, and not in a great way many times, the sandwich generation person to cut back on their work hours, taking leaves of absence, missing work to catch up on things, even if that's rest or appointments, you name it. And so they may lose opportunities for promotions, for, paying off a bill that's been weighing on them, or other opportunities. And so that loss of income impacts not only the way that we live and the things that we do, but it could also in the long term impact our retirement benefits. Susan?
Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca. We know that every family experiences these stressors differently because every family is unique. So here on the slide, we've just kind of outlined a few of the scenarios that you might have in your family. And each of them comes with some specific stressors and challenges. So for example, if you have a child with a developmental disability, you might be missing the in-home care support that you might have through social service programs or state programs. So, what is your comfort level having someone come into your home right now? That varies from family to family. If your child has a learning disability, switching to the virtual format, it's pretty challenging right now. So more may be required of you as a parent/teacher. If you're working, if you have a family member with dementia, you know that the stressors are unique. When your parent is showing symptoms like paranoia, or if they start to wander from the home, there are specific things that you need to educate yourself on and make sure that there's safety in the home. And then, we could give examples for every single one of these scenarios, but acute illness also right now is extremely difficult if you have a loved one who goes into the hospital for COVID or something non-COVID related. In most cases, you're not able to go with them or to visit them. And that's extremely stressful for you and the person you're caring for. We do know that there are things that all families have in common if there's caregiving going on. And as I mentioned, safety concerns is a big one. Just you as the sandwich generation caregiver are likely responsible for making sure that your children are safe, but also your aging parent isn't falling or is taking their medication properly or is getting to the doctor on a regular basis. Sometimes we feel stigma. It's a little bit baffling because there's so many of us out there doing this, but it can be hard sometimes when you are with friends. If they're not living the same kind of life that you're living, you can feel a little bit like a Debbie Downer, let's face it. If you're, talking about what's going on in your life and it's pretty hard, it can be, sometimes you might choose not to talk about it. And that's unfortunate for us as the family caregivers because we do need to talk about it. So we're going to get to that later. So it can be isolating. As Rebecca mentioned, there is frequently family conflict around what is the best decision for our parent or our aging relative. If there are simmering family conflicts that have been around for a while, they can certainly come to a head when there's a crisis situation, such as a serious illness, or if somebody's declining cognitively, family conflict can erupt again. Certainly financial worries due to all the reasons that Rebecca just mentioned with losing time at work, losing opportunities at work can bring more financial stress. And, substance abuse, misuse is a real concern. The coping mechanisms that we use sometimes are adaptive and sometimes they're maladaptive, meaning they don't serve us in the end, but it might feel good in the moment. And then all family caregivers sometimes wonder, how do I get the right resources? I know I need help, but where do I go to get that help? And just the fear of the unknown. We never know when we wake up in the morning what that day is going to look like. And that in itself is stressful. And COVID. COVID is, no surprise, causing a lot more stress for family caregivers. And this data is from a study done, again, by the American Psychological Association just this year. Parents are reporting more stress than adults without children. Of course, we know virtual schooling is a stressor for parents, but also there are so many folks out of work right now that basic needs like food and housing are not being met. And, it's hard to think of a greater stressor than not knowing where your next meal is coming from. Americans have reported that the government response to COVID has been a cause of stress. And then, of course, we know that communities of color are facing all of these issues at a higher rate because of the higher rates of COVID in the communities and just getting basic needs met and being able to access healthcare. Rebecca?
Thank you, Susan. So COVID and the sandwich generation. We as sandwich generation members are combating this virus from a different level. We're having to manage at-risk parents and child activities for one. And that's difficult because we're working with two different generations who generally are not understanding in some situations how important it is to be safe. So we're having issues with in-person visits versus virtual visits. I don't know if any of you have tried to teach an older adult how to use an iPad or a tablet or anything like that, but I literally had to write my mom a step-by-step approach as to how to get her tablet on so we could Zoom with her and have some kind of connection. And we have laughed as a family, and we finally just decided that even with that book that I put together, I needed to call her and go page by page 15 minutes before our meeting. Otherwise, we would miss half the meeting trying to get her on. You know, there's travel concerns. If your parents don't live nearby, like mine or Susan's, we have to think about, how do we go visit them? How do we see them? Do we do that? Is it safe? Is it meaningful for us to just have Zoom meetings or FaceTime time with them? And there's that whole thought of isolation versus socialization. How much do we allow our kids to go to soccer practice, to go to volleyball practice, to engage in activities with maybe the kids next door? And for that matter, even our older parents, do we, let them still have coffee with their friend down the street? Do we bring in additional caregivers to assist with the isolation factor? What is going on? We just, we saw a great, this past week, this is so timely, because we have this huge holiday dilemma. We see two sides of a coin. Where do we let them be isolated and take the chance that there's more issues with depression and a sense of loss, or is the risk just too much to bear with that? And so we skip this Thanksgiving, we minimize this Christmas, we do it differently for the sake of having them around next year. So it's a constant struggle for all of us. My sister, just one more thing. I was just going to say, my sister has done this great thing for our family where she's doing the secret, or elves on the shelves. I always call them the wrong thing. And she's now sending the whole family, including my parents, kind of the where are the snowflake and Buddy, and they're always in great positions, and it makes us laugh every day. So it's something different to do. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Susan. Thank you. But again, many of us have folks in communities, and we are visiting them through windows, or visiting them through the computer. And again, that's difficult because they feel isolated. It's hard to make a meaningful connection through a window. And at the same time, we are wondering in some cases about the accountability or risk of neglect in some of the communities. Now, one thing I do want to say is we cannot, as Sandwich Generation, as anyone with older adults, operate without the communities. The communities are all working extremely hard to do the best they can and safeguard everybody. But there are those concerns for family members that I think we just need to be aware of. And we have, again, the added responsibility of schooling, as Susan's mentioned. If you're trying to, I find this amazing because for years now, we've been telling our kids, enough screen time, enough screen time, enough screen time, go out and play, engage with other people in person. And now we are pulling all that back and going, more screen time, get on school, do your class, do what you need to do. So it's one of those back and forth things, but we're all trying to adjust. And like I said, guiding parents through technology is difficult. And so sometimes we just got to pair those two generations up, because the kids can really teach our older adults, and we can stand in the background and go like, oh, that's how you do it. Now I get it. So, we do the best we can with what we have. And stressed is dessert spelled backwards. So if all else fails, grab a snack. So we're going to start by going over some strategies for coping at this time, in the hopes that we actually do better things than grab the snack. But let's start with managing our brain. So survival strategy number 1. This is one of the things that I constantly remind myself to do. What is realistic for my day? What are the 3 top issues that I have to get done today? If I have extra time, what can I immediately impact in that moment? If I have 30 minutes, what do I know I can finish in 30 minutes? And is it important? Or is that time for me to just go take a walk or read a book or just sit quietly or call a friend? What can I do in that moment? And again, many of us stress over all kinds of things, but in reality, we have to ask ourselves, is this task important at this moment? Can it wait an hour? Can it wait a day? will it change my life if I don't get to it? And if we start asking these questions and really anticipating what is important versus not important, I think it'll really help us, and help making sure that we maintain our flexibility, our acceptance of what the situation is, try to stay as positive as possible during any of these situations, and focus on what is important. It really does change our outlook and our day. And so I think, you know, it's not, I do this every day. I mean, every day I have to remind myself of these things. So it's a small step at a time. It's a small step at a time. And it you know, if you can have those three, you get it done, you have a real sense of accomplishment for the day. The next slide, please, Susan. And one of those things is just, you know, caregiving, being part of the sandwich generation, we cannot plan. For those of us who are planners, this is a tough spot for us because sometimes we just have to go with the flow. So don't be resistant to what happens today. Learn to love, laugh, and stay in the moment. You can discover all kinds of wonderful stories about your parents that they never shared with you as you were growing up. I find that my parents were extremely different with their grandchildren. I mean, the things that they would do and treat, and I found out the other day that my mother would offer, if my niece ate all her vegetables, she would then take her for a milkshake afterwards. Like, I was like, what? We would have never had that happen. So, you know, just really great little things like that, that if you stay and live in the moment, you start to find out and experience a whole new journey. One thing I'm going to say to all of you out there is forgive yourself daily. You are doing your best. This is a hard job. So, you know, you did it with love. You know, you put your best effort forward, and your parents and your children do love you, and they do appreciate everything that you're doing. So give yourself a break and take care of yourself. Find someone to talk to if you need to, whether that's a professional or a friend or another sandwich generation member. Engage in positive practices like mindfulness, yoga, relaxation. And this is one of my favorite quotes when I'm having, you know, when I'm not taking my time and I need to do, I can only please one person per day, and today I choose me.
Amen to that. Okay, survival strategy number 2. We are advising you to be an average parent. Okay, so if you're like me, just hearing that makes you cringe a little bit, because none of us wants to be an average parent, right? We want to be the best parent that we can be to our child or children. And let's face it, even under, you know, normal circumstances, non-COVID circumstances, that is a tall order when you are responsible for one or more children and one or more aging adults. So the first thing is, don't compare yourself to other parents at your kid's school or other parents at your place of worship or people you see on TV, because you just don't know what's going on in their life and they don't know what's going on in your life. And comparisons can often make us feel like we're not measuring up. So just try to avoid that as much as possible. And as Rebecca said, just prioritize what is essential. So learn to say no, like our friend here on the right, even though her first instinct is to say, yes, I will help with that volunteer project, and I can teach Sunday school, and sure, I can pick up your kid at, you know, at camp every afternoon, whatever it is. You know, get comfortable with the word no, because you really do have to put the essentials first. And just keep in mind that it's not going to be like this forever. You know, the day will come where your child will be a little more independent, where your children might help each other a little bit more, where your parent sadly will not be with us anymore. So there is, I think, benefit in stepping back a little bit and just saying to yourself, this is a moment in time. And, you know, I'm going to make the best of this because I know it won't always be this way. So how can we enlist our kids in elder care? Because when you think about it, this is just an ingenious strategy, right? Because if you can get these two generations to work together and help each other, it's a win for you and it's a win for them. So here's some examples. If you teach your children things like reading the newspaper to your older relative or working on a meal together. So when you come home from work, if they could make spaghetti dinner for everyone, wouldn't that be fabulous? Your children can provide tech support. They know this stuff better than we do. So let's, let them do their thing with our parents. I think it's also important to talk to your kids about what is happening with your aging loved one. Frequently that would be apart from your parent or it could be together, but really educating your child about what's going on, especially if there's dementia in the picture, because children can take things personally and they can be hurt sometimes by what an older loved one might say or do. So really educating them about dementia, if that's in the picture, I think is very helpful. And then talking to your kids about how you are coping and the strategies that you're using, I think is a wonderful opportunity to model for your children how to face difficulty in their lives. You're also modeling empathy, responsibility, and respect for elders for your children. And those are just golden things for us to pass along to our children and hopefully to prime them for the years when they will be caring for us. And then some kids can feel jealous or upset if they feel that you're choosing your parent over them. So again, it's just about having those regular conversations so that your kids can understand why you're splitting your time. Okay, let's see here. How do you find your people and who are your people? Well, when we talk about your people, this is basically the people who understand what's going on in your life. They're not judging, they listen well. And you might be surprised where you find these people. Some of them may be your best buddies from high school or your coworkers, but some of them might be people you didn't expect. So if you're standing in line at your child's school, if that ever happens again, just striking up a conversation, you might find that there are many people in your circle, distant circle, who are living a similar life to you. So that can be helpful to share your story a little bit so that you can find each other in the crowd. Attending support groups. A lot of people are resistant to this idea, because the idea of talking about your personal life in front of strangers, but I really encourage you to try it at least once, because speaking for myself, I have found that to be one of the most helpful things when dealing with difficult times, is to talk to other people who really do understand. And right now we can do that virtually, as well as, when things get back to normal, in person. And then finally, if there are people in your family or in your friend circle who are constantly telling you how you should be doing things differently, or, worst case scenario, telling you you're doing it wrong, it's important for your mental health to distance yourself or to say to them, I know that you have your thoughts about this, but I'm doing the best that I can. And then, disengage, because the haters aren't going to help you through this. And let's see, how do you protect your time with your people? You just have to be selfish. Let's face it. I mean, some people are really good at this, and I'm still trying to get better at it, but blocking out the time for yourself as if it is the most important appointment that you're going to have all week or all day, and to protect it. Do not let other things get in the way of it. And I know that this is easier said than done, believe me, but I just encourage you to not feel guilty about protecting that exercise time or that time where you go shopping by yourself or you go for a walk, because you become resentful if you give up that time, and that ultimately that doesn't help you or the people you're taking care of. And that includes, if you are in a relationship, having a no caregiving talk zone with your partner sometimes, because it is very easy to have your entire conversation always be about the people that you're caring for, and your relationship can be negatively impacted by that.
Susan, that's such a great tip. Thank you for sharing that, because yeah, your personal time is valuable, and especially with your spouse, because who's gonna, or your significant other, who's gonna help you through it more than they are. So we're up to survival strategy number 4, and this is access to available resources. This is where we tell you where you can find how to do some of this stuff. So both San Diego, for example, has some really wonderful opportunities for resources, and there are also really great national resources. I just am going to highlight a couple of these from the list that we have here. You know, most all of them have some kind of a support group. Like Susan was saying, you have to give it a chance at some point. County of San Diego, the Alzheimer's San Diego, Alzheimer's Association, Family Caregiver Alliance, they all have wonderful support groups. They also all have really great education forums and things online where you can go and learn more about your specific situation, and resources that are out there just for you. And then there's really great respite programs through, for example, Southern Caregivers, Alzheimer's Association, San Diego Alzheimer's, and the George G. Glenner Family Centers, which can give you some time off, give you a day here and there where you just can take a day off, get some rest, do what you need to do. And also some really great legal and financial opportunities through Southern Resources and employer options as well. And then the elder care locator has some great tips, because we don't all live in the same neighborhoods as our families and our parents, especially, or the older adults that we're taking care of. So you can go in there and put in some information about where they live and see what resources are available in their communities as far as supportive services, housing, health, transportation, all kinds of things. So really easy, just put any of those names in the Google, and it'll take you right to their website, and you can find some really great information to assist you in caring for your older adults. And then the next slide, please. As parents, reach out to other parents. I know I have some really great friends who have, date night. So they get their day night by, letting their kids stay at the other family's house. And then the next month they swap, or however it is they do that. And that way they get some alone time. Their kids have a sleepover. It's a win-win for everybody. And that works well. But also, many religious organizations or spiritual organizations have lots of resources for parents, as do the school systems. There's parenting classes. Every special needs organization or association always has a lot of resources for parents. One of my former students just started a forum for children with autism. Her son has autism, and it's just an amazing program that she and her husband started to help other parents. And then, it's okay to get a babysitter every so often for your kids, so that you can have some time. So whether it's a friend, a nanny, an actual babysitter who can assist, most definitely reach out and do what you can to give yourself some space. And we're better parents when we have time. And then work-related resources. I think these are often not used enough. Employee Assistance Program, EAP, offers a lot of employment opportunities, or employees opportunities for counseling. They're not now even starting, a few of them starting to assist with evaluations for care plans for parents or special needs children. So it's important to check with your employer and see, do they have an EAP program that can be customized to assist you and what's going on. Also, what's available as far as for family caregivers, paid leave, flex time, job sharing. Can you work? Well, most of us are all working from home right now, but is this something that we can do even after things open up again? And, for those of you who are essential workers, first of all, thank you, thank you, thank you. We could not be in this situation without any of you. My heart goes out to all of you, and we so appreciate you. But talk to your employer about, daycare services. Is that available? Is that something that can help you out during this time? And again, there's lots of elder care resources. There's respite programs, adult daycare, again, your religious institutions and nonprofits have a lot of these supportive services as well. The County of San Diego has a great resource guide for many of these things, including in-home supported services. And then there's aging life care managers, which Susan and I both are, and we have an amazing association where you can, again, put in your zip code and find somebody like Susan or myself in the area where your parent lives to help you find some resources or even help take away some of the burden. And there's also elder law attorneys and financial planners who can assist with some of those legal and financial issues.
All right, we're to our another survival strategy. This is so hugely important and something that as we get busy with our day-to-day lives often goes to the back burner, and that is getting your paperwork in order. So why is that a big deal? It's a big deal because if something happens to you or to the parent that you're taking care of, and let's say one of you is incapacitated, meaning you're still alive, but you are unable to communicate your wishes when it comes to healthcare. If you're unable to pay your bills, if you're unable to get on your computer to do all of the online banking that you normally do, how's that going to work? Who can step in for you? And what it boils down to is that banks and hospitals require documentation. If they're going to let you step in as a decision maker for your aging parent, they want to see legal documentation showing that you have the authority to do that. Same thing in a medical situation. They are not going to look to you to be a decision maker if there isn't evidence that your parent wanted you to be in that role. And I think that's particularly true if there are multiple children in the family. How is the hospital supposed to know which of you has the legal authority to make decisions for your parent? So these are some examples of really key documents that we encourage you to get into place. So powers of attorney for healthcare and property. Again, this is if you are alive, but unable to make decisions for yourself or to articulate your decisions or to pay bills. You also want to appoint a guardian for your children. Very, very important, especially, again, if you would want to designate somebody other than your next of kin to be the guardian for your child or children. And this is in the event of your incapacity or your death, who will care for your child? A HIPAA authorization form. This is, again, what tells the hospital or the home health agency that it's okay to talk to you as the next of kin and decision maker for your parent. And healthcare advance directives can include a discussion about end of life situation and what you or your parent want to happen in that situation. And it's really important to tell someone once you execute these documents, make sure that the people who need them know where they are located. And if you're comfortable, give them the copies of them so they can access them in a time of crisis. Here are a couple of websites, and Rebecca and I are going to give you our contact information at the end. So you can also email us or ask questions at the end of this presentation, and we can give you more detailed information. But 2 healthcare advance directives that you can easily access on your own. There's a state form through the state of California where you can fill it out online and print it out, the Advanced Healthcare Directive form. And it's a very long website, but it's free and available to all of us as Californians. And then 5 Wishes is another great resource. It's a little more involved and you do have to order it from the website, but it's a great way to stimulate family conversation around end of life care.
Thank you, Susan. So we're on to our 6th and final survival strategy, and this is finding that intergenerational moment of joy. And so I believe Susan said this earlier, you know, we have to remember this won't last forever. We're not always going to be in this situation where we are caring for two generations at the same time, and we're right smack in the middle. Sometimes we're like, you know, the robust piece of meat or cheese, or, you know, the juicy tomato, and other times we're like the limp lettuce because we're so tired. But the thing is that we really want to make sure that, you know, we're enjoying the moments that we can. And so how do we do that? We do that through sharing family stories. There's a StoryCorps app that can be used for that, you know, playing together. Older adults and kids both love to do lots of things, whether it's a board game, Legos. You know, we have some really great options for movement with the children and older adults that's safe and fun. You know, right now we're in the midst of the holidays, and there's lots of holidays. We can find a holiday in almost every month, but so family, you know, decorating recipes, you know, passing those down, having, you know, grandma or grandpa show them how to make the family cookie, or barbecue sauce, or whatever it is in your family that you like to do. And then just get active. There's lots of, you know, gardening, fishing, dancing, baseball, you name it. Lots of things that you can do in the backyard or in the living room, and just have some fun. And then, you know, learn something new. You know, historical events are a really great thing. Maybe your parent lived in that event, but your child's learning it at school. You know, they could tell you, we just went through this, you know, voting situation. I found it amazing how many older adults were sharing their first voting experience with children and what it meant. And so, you know, again, just find what's happening currently and turn it into an activity for your family. And engage in a new life practice. I mean, kids can benefit from yoga as much as you can, as much as your parent can. Tai Chi, lots of different practices. Learning how to manage that anxiety is really great for our kids, to be honest, as they grow up and then have to deal with other things that are going on, especially in a COVID situation. So really just find any kind of activity that you can do together as a family unit to just add another layer of memory, another layer of joy, another layer of, you know, relaxation and time together. It really is about time together.
Okay, so just to review, these are our suggestions. Number one, take control of your brain. Don't let your brain or your thinking lead you down a negative path. Be an average parent. Don't go for superhero, especially right now. Find your people and be with them. Super important to have your support system in place and to maintain it. Access those resources because they are out there for the taking. There are many wonderful people in San Diego who are waiting to help you. Get your paperwork in order for your peace of mind, and so a crisis situation can be more easily navigated. And then finally, work to find those intergenerational moments of joy and to create them. Now is the perfect time during a holiday season. And one of our final thoughts is try to treat yourself the way that you would treat a friend or someone you really care about. You know, be compassionate with yourself, just as you are with other people. And that's easier said than done sometimes, but it really will enhance your life. If that inner voice that's always chattering away is a voice that says, hey, you know, you're pretty exceptional. You know, you're doing awesome job under tough circumstances. Okay, so that concludes the content of our presentation. We hope that there are some questions that we can answer for you. Jen, what's been coming in?
Right off the bat, I have, where can I find legal resources, additional information on legal resources to help me?
Well, I can take that one, Rebecca, and please jump in. San Diego has a really great organization called Elder Law and Advocacy, which is a nonprofit organization which is set up to provide advice and referral regarding legal issues related to older adults. if you are a sandwich generation person looking to set up your own estate plan, for example, there are estate planning attorneys throughout San Diego and also elder law attorneys. There's an organization called the National Association of Elder Law Attorneys, NAELA, N-A-E-L-A, that has a website, and you can search for elder law attorneys in your area. And the difference between estate planning and elder law, there is overlap, but elder law attorneys can specialize in issues related to conservatorships or guardianships. If there's family conflict related to the care of an older person, if there's abuse or neglect issues, whereas estate planning attorneys tend to focus more on executing those documents that we talked about, making sure, and including financial documents such as a last will and testament and a trust. So those are some, I hope that addressed your question, but please write again if we didn't hit the mark with that.
We also have some thank yous for the presentation and your content. Here's another question. Could you explain the Healthcare Advance Directive more, please?
You want me to take that, Susan?
Yes.
So a healthcare advance directive is basically the roadmap for your family member or whoever you designate to be your voice when you are not able to do that. So it tells the individual, what it is you would like to see happen. Do you want to be resuscitated? Do you not want to be resuscitated? What kinds of interventions would you like to have? Do you want to be put on a feeding tube, for example? Do you want to be put on a ventilator if you can't breathe? And under what circumstances? Do two doctors have to agree? Does just one doctor have to agree that it's, maybe you're likely to pass before you're likely to get better, for example. So it really is the roadmap to allow that person to make decisions on your behalf. But more importantly, it designates that person. So who is your person? Who is the individual that is going to make the decisions regarding your health when you are unable to do so? If you don't do that, it generally will either go to the next of kin, or it'll be done based on what is most reasonable based on your situation, what is usual and customary. And not all of us necessarily want that usual and customary intervention. So hopefully that answered your question.
And I would add that if you are somebody who does not have close family, or as Rebecca said, healthcare providers, for example, will try to locate a relative, to involve in the decision making. But if there is no such person, if you have lost contact with your family, or you are estranged from your family, or there just isn't anybody, it's especially important to put your wishes in writing. And there are some professionals who can act as decision makers. For example, professional fiduciaries. Some of them will act as your healthcare agent. Because if that documentation is not in place, then sometimes it's up to a judge to appoint somebody to be your decision maker. It has to go through the court system. And it's time consuming, it's stressful, it's costly. So it's better to get all of this ironed out ahead of time.
Yeah. And your decision maker does not have to be a family member. It can be anybody. It could be, your best friend's daughter. It could be your neighbor. It could be whomever it is you choose to make the decision. The important part is you choose someone who will execute your decisions as you wish them to be.
Thank you. Another question we have is, my parents can't come out of their community. How can I help them?
Okay, so I'm assuming this question is related to retirement communities. That's what those of us who work in this field will often refer to a memory care community, or a retirement community, or an assisted living community. These are facilities where older people live. And as you all are probably aware, there's been a lot of restrictions on visitation in these communities for the protection of the staff and the residents. But it also has been very, very hard for residents and families to not be able to visit in person. There's window visiting going on in some cases, or outdoor visitation in some cases. But I mean, any way you slice it, it's tough for everybody, and it's really all about infection control. So what are some things that you can do for your loved one? Is, I would say, just remain in contact with regular phone conversations. If there's a way for you to get a tablet in there for them, and if somebody can help them use it, doing Skype or FaceTiming, video chat, can be a wonderful substitute for in-person contact. And it also provides entertainment options, just something different for that person to do while they're in isolation, so to speak, until we get a vaccine, and hopefully things can be different. Rebecca, would you add to that?
I would add, I mean, if you can send cards, I mean, homemade cards, again, getting your kids to help you with something, making anything like that is great. In fact, my dad sent my niece a beautiful birthday card for her birthday. So he made her a card, and, she's making him something for Thanksgiving. So it's, it can go both ways. But yeah, I think, virtual is not the same as in person. You can't hold your parent's hand, you can't hug them, you can't do that, but you can, blow kisses through the video, and you can do things that way. And for those of us who have parents away, I mean, I actually have seen my father and my mom way more than I did before COVID, because I was in San Diego and they're in New Mexico. And so we never did video, and we do it a couple times a week. So there is some benefit to this situation, and it is hard. It is hard to not get out, but again, it's balancing that risk versus freedom situation right now.
Thank you. I think this next question has to do with parents that are not in communities, but it says, my parents refuse to stay home. How can I help them be safe?
So this is a great question. I just dealt with this with some of my clients, and I've also dealt with this with a friend and her parent. And what we did is we really just talked to them about what was their risk, what was the risk to themselves, how we would feel, or how their family would feel if something happened to them. But also, one of my girlfriend's dad actually said, well, I'm 90 years old. If I get COVID, what do I care? If I pass it this time, that's okay. And we said to him, it's not just about you, but what if you bring it home to your new wife? Yeah, he got married at 87. Great story. What if you, go into the grocery store and you touch something, and some, single mom, gets sick because of it. So I think really it was a hard conversation, but it was an important conversation. And we helped them to realize that it is important to stay home. It is important to wear a mask. It is important to follow the protocols for safety.
Yeah, and I would just add, I mean, all over the news right now is just how our healthcare providers are struggling to maintain their mental health and physical health, and the sacrifices that our nurses and physicians and everybody working in hospitals is making right now. So yeah, I think having a conversation about the communal good, and if you get, it's one thing to say, if you get COVID, well, so what, I'm 92, but you're likely going to want to go to the hospital if you can't breathe. And so, that is a community taking care of you at that point. And it's a group of people who are already stretched to the limit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did have one comment that said, one idea for an intergenerational activity is for young kids or teens, if they don't think it's too cheesy, to use available technology to interview their grandparent relative who is being taken care of in their home or from afar via Zoom recording, and vice versa. The grandparent interviewing the kids creates fun and discovery and appreciation of each other's experiences. Kids can learn what their grandparents did for fun, what were the toys they played with back in the day, who was their first girlfriend, things like that. So that was a comment from one of the participants.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
I love that. My son did a project in school last year where he did that. He interviewed grandparents about a family heirloom. And so just hearing the stories about the family Bible that was passed down and the family nutcracker, and where did that thing come from? It's sitting on our shelf, but what's the story behind that?
That's
So I
great.
agree. That's wonderful. Thanks for bringing that up.
That's great. Well, I think we are at our last minute, so maybe we should put up our contact information and close things off. That'd be great. All right.
All
So
right.
this is
Thank
how to
you.
contact us. We appreciate, thank you guys. We appreciate all of you being here today. Stay safe, be well.
Yes. And this slide, by the way, is available on the platform for the Live Well Advance. If you go to the page where it describes this session, there should be 2 downloads. One is the resource slide and the other is this slide. So if you need